I guess I really want to get started with pretty much where your origins are
My origins before I got my superpowers.
before you got your superpowers. Yeah.
Before I got this cape.
Justin Kahn, before Yale, before you went there.
Yeah.
Like what were your aspirations? And
What were my aspirations? So I'm from Seattle, and I grew up a couple blocks from one of my friends who would become my co-founder and is Twitch's CEO today. I liked all sorts of nerdy stuff when I was a kid. I liked magic cards. I don't know if no one plays that anymore. A few people, okay. And I liked playing role-playing games and stuff. And I got into, I was like in the advanced math class and all that great, really stuff that made me super popular when I was a kid. And I guess I didn't really learn how to program though until I kind of dabbled around it, but I didn't I wasn't like a, young programming genius or anything. I just, pretty normal,
right.
normal, nerdy, suburban. Well, actually I lived in the city, but it was kind of like I don't know, played soccer badly.
Right.
So yeah, nothing special. I wasn't there was nothing spectacular.
Right. But then you went to Yale for physics and philosophy. Where did you think that was going to go?
Yeah, so I mean, luckily got into Yale. I was in July, way past, off the wait list. Someone actually had to get suspended so that I could take his place and get in. So I lucked out. I saw that guy years later. I was like, thank you.
Right.
Good job. But yeah, I got into Yale. I wanted to study physics because my parents kind of told me, hey, you should study something quantitative, with, where there's numbers. It'll be good basis for whatever you want to do. And so I studied physics, but actually at Yale, you can do a combined major, which means taking two different majors and doing half the classes in each. So after I took physics for a while, I was like, this is really hard. The advanced classes I was not doing very well in. So I decided to change to a physics and philosophy major, which meant I could take replace half the physics classes, all the hard ones,
right.
with philosophy classes. And people now, well, I mean, it was great. I'm glad they offered that option, but
Did you have a passion for philosophy, or?
Not really, no. Philosophy was pretty fun. I mean, I feel like I learned a lot. I got to write a lot, which is nice.
Right.
I think writing is really important to develop just basic communication skills, right? That's kind of the fundamental thing that it's probably people ask me, what did you learn before that helped you with business stuff? And that was the one thing that probably helped the most, was, being able to write well.
Right. So you're with your dorm mate, and you guys come up with the idea for Kiko. Now, was that idea originally something for you to use where it was okay, I really need this piece of software in my life, so I'm going to develop this for myself? Or did you develop it right away as, this is something I think everyone could use and maybe I can monetize this in the end?
Yeah, so Kiko was this calendar. It was kind of like Google Calendar, except it came out about a month before Google Calendar came out. And we had seen Gmail. We were college students. We'd seen Gmail come out, and we were like, this is really cool email. Someone should make a calendar that's kind of the accompaniment for this. Of course, many thousands of people, I think, thought the same thing at the time, including people who worked at Google. But we didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't know anything about startups or building web apps or anything like that. So we just said, okay, let's just try it out. And we started working on it from our dorm room, me and my friend Emmett. And Emmett and we just we weren't good programmers. He knew a little bit more than me. He was a CS major, but I didn't know anything. And so I kind of just learned by Googling JavaScript tutorials and kind of piecing together various things. I was like, oh, I want to be able to drag and drop appointments around on my calendar. So I figured I would Google how do you make something drag and drop on a page, and then we would just kind of build a prototype.
Right.
And we didn't really have a plan. We didn't know how we would make money from it. We didn't say, oh, this could be a big business one day. We just kind of said, hey, this seems like something that would be on the internet, so let's just try to make it.
Right.
The bad thing was that we weren't really building it for ourselves because we were building a calendar. My senior year, I only had class Monday and Wednesday. I remembered that. There wasn't any.
Right.
I didn't have appointments. I didn't have the busy schedule or anything. So we never really used it. And I think that was kind of the fundamental flaw, was we were building something that, we didn't know what people wanted with the product. And so we kind of were unable to make something that was super compelling.
Did you have a pretty significant user base at the time?
No.
No.
We had an insignificant user base.
So there was no one to really bounce off of, like, how can we fix this? How can we improve it? And
well, that would have been a good idea, probably, to talk to our users and figure out how we could fix it or improve it, but we didn't do that.
Okay.
We just kind of guessed. We were, I think, wrong 100% of the time, actually. And at the end, we had maybe 25,000 people who had signed up for accounts, but it wasn't. Most of them were not like actively using it.
Okay. So eventually, it became something that you could sell, because obviously there's a story where you sold it on eBay, and the CO2 cows picks it up. Maybe could you tell a little bit of that story, just in case someone?
Sure. So a year in, we had gotten funding from this program called Y Combinator. It was the first time, through the first batch of YC, so it was very unproven. It wasn't anything that people didn't know about it at the time. We were just like, we were amazed that anyone would give us any money for our company. And so we graduated, we decided, okay, we're gonna work on startups full time. We don't know what that means. And we didn't really have any role models or anything. So PG and Y Combinator gave us, I think $12,000 to work on our idea, and we were like, okay, that seems amazing, like that someone would invest in our business at all.
Yeah.
So we worked on it for about a year, and unfortunately, we were not able to produce anything that people were like really using that much. And we were pretty discouraged. We were like, okay, let's sell the company and try to get back enough money that we can pay our investors back. We raised a little bit of money from PG's friends afterwards.
Right.
And we ended up, we had no idea how we would sell the company. And so I'd seen this other company sell themselves on eBay like the year before. I was like, okay, that's a thing, that's an idea. Let's like try that out. And so we ended up listing Kiko, like our website, on eBay. And I just remember the day of, someone's getting an important phone call. The day of the auction, it was like, we listed it at like $50,000, and it went up. We got a bid at like to 80 or 85, and I was like, that's awesome. We're gonna make some money. Finally, 'cause we've been paying ourselves very little. And then every time I'd refresh, I was sitting in my friend's apartment in New York. It was like super hot day. It's like in my underwear. He didn't have air conditioning. I'm like at his computer, just like clicking refresh on this thing. Really shitty apartment. Right. And it just kept going up. Every time it would go up like 10 grand. I'd be like 100,000, and then like 113,000, and then 150, and it ended up at like 258,000. And like we actually made some money. I was like super exciting for me at the time. It's like, this is, we invented a new business model. We'll just make a failing startup and then sell it on eBay. That was, so that's how we got our start in, entrepreneurship.
So, if you could travel back in time, all right, and you go see your former self in your underwear, going to sell your company on eBay, would you advise that person to take that path, even though that is a pretty big step in building who you are today? Would you have advised them to do it differently?
Yeah, I would have gone back in time and told me to make Dropbox.
Yeah.
But no, but I think it was pretty good, right? Like, I don't think, one of the things I realize now, it's like, is that, I wasn't in the position where I like knew how to be successful or knew how to do the things to like become successful when I was 22 years old. I didn't know like how to talk to customers and identify what they actually wanted out of our product. I didn't like have enough actual technical skills to build something that was actually very good. First product was pretty bad, actually. I didn't know how to like recruit people who were like really excellent and get them to work on my company. So like, there's all these things we learned, in the last 10 years that enabled us to become much more successful. And I think that like just knowing, you should start this company or have like do this idea or it's all going to work out in the end.
Right.
Like, that's not enough like information to actually make me successful, right? I feel like there were a lot of like things behind the scenes, like skills that you had to learn to like in order to figure out how to build a company that could be 20 or 50 or 100 people.
Right. So going back on what you just said about knowing how to talk to people to figure out what they want out of whatever you're putting together, Was part of that just getting to the people, or was it actually knowing how to process what they tell you?
Well, the first step was probably just talking to them. I didn't do that at all.
Right.
Like we never went to our customer. I mean, I think there's a lot more people writing about it now and talking about it, but at the time there was no like playbook for how you should do a startup, or we didn't know like, oh, we should identify some. I mean, I guess it sounds pretty obvious, but like we were just out of college. We didn't even know how to like have a job,
right?
Let alone like start a company that would employ other people. And so, we didn't know like, oh, we should go talk to our users and figure out how we can like make their lives better, or like what problem are we solving, identify a specific problem that we're solving for them, and then figure out how we can like solve it better.
Right.
So we weren't talking to anyone, and then we weren't asking them any questions, really. We were just kind of like imagining a product and then building it from our minds,
Yeah. Were you kind of in that space? I know sometimes I get in that space as well, where it's like, I have this great idea, and I don't want to hear how to change it, because in my mind, I'm like, this is perfect. Like,
Yeah,
I don't need to hear anything,
A lot of founders in the early days are like, I have this great idea for a product. Like, if only everyone saw like the world how I see it could be, everyone would be using this thing. And a lot of times, people aren't going to give you that benefit of the doubt. If you're not like immediately solving a problem that they have at that moment, they're not going to like invest the time to figure out how you're supposed to use the product. So I think that's a very first-time founder problem.
There's also, I'm sure, a problem with like sort of wearing your heart on your sleeve too, where it's like, maybe you don't know how to take criticism as well, sort of like, again, going back to, we already mentioned like, you think it's the perfect app, but like you put so much of yourself into it too, you just don't want to hear that it's not perfect,
Yeah, I think that like in the early days when, I design a product, I was like, this is like great, and tons of people are going to use it, and then people would say, oh, it's not, it doesn't really work that well, or like, I don't know why I would ever use this, and then, it's easy to be defensive.